The No Nonsense Roundtable. It's a weekly show broadcast on Rochester, New York's 50,000-watt iHeart radio station, News Radio Wham 1180. The host, Dom Geneva, interviews guests from all walks of life, all with amazing stories to tell. What you are about to hear is a recording of a previous broadcast with limited commercials. Now, here's host, Dom Geneva.
Well, welcome everybody to another edition of your No Nonsense Roundtable. I'm Dom Geneva. Every Saturday, 10 o'clock right here. And all the old shows are on, I always say old shows, all the prior shows, sounds better that way, are on NoNonsenseRoundtable.com. So the show is always for people that you know and you want to know more about. And next week we have the mayor on the show. Malik Evans is going to be on. But today we have somebody that you may know, but probably don't, and his name is John Myers. And John Myers, tell everybody what you do.
Well, I'm a advertising photographer and director, and I have another company called Life Interviews, and I've been working in Rochester for 39 years doing it in Rochester advertising.
And it's a really fascinating story. I took a tour of his studio a couple of weeks ago, and we're going to get to talk about that and beyond that. But the question I always like to ask is that when you were 10 or 12 years old, what did you want to do?
I always wanted to be a photographer. Really? I remember 12 years old, I had my first Kodak 126 camera. I mean, I just loved taking pictures, and it's always been something I love to do.
Well, the camera you had back then probably was just like snapshots, right? Yeah, I mean, you didn't have focal length and
nothing. Nothing. It was as basic as it could be. You pop the cartridge in the back of the camera, and then you had 12 exposures, and you made sure every picture had to count because that's all you had was 12. Not like today.
Yeah, you stuck it in an envelope and you mailed it someplace. Or here, I was from Long Island. And when I was a boy, I had one of those Instamatic cameras. It wasn't really Instamatic. I mean, there was nothing instant about it. It was just, it was just a way of loading the film easier, and they call it Instamatic. So you had this cartridge, you put it in, and I remember mailing it off as a young boy to someplace somewhere. You put in this yellow envelope and you mailed it, and it came back. I see you shaking your head. Where did it go? I mean, where did that stuff go?
It went to Kodak, and most of the time, right down here in Rochester, all those cartridges went. A lot of times.
Oh, okay.
It was I remember when I was early in my career at Kodak, they had a huge plant on let me think, Lake Avenue, which did a ton of processing for all those pictures that were mailed in.
And I remember back then, now I'm living on Long Island, and I would pay for air mail. There was no way in God's green earth that was going to get airmailed wherever it was. I thought it was going to come faster, and never came. And then so at some point in time, you got a good camera. So
yes,
how did that happen?
Well, it's funny. My father, he was a businessman, and I said I wanted to go to school of photography, and then I had to buy a camera, and it was a lot of money back then. Probably about I went to RIT, and I think it was like $800 or $900 for my father to spend on a camera.
Wow.
Yeah, back then, And my first camera, I had a couple lenses, and then I went off to RIT and in the photo program at RIT.
Well, no offense, but you're not that young of a guy.
No.
I mean,
no.
so $800 back then would be the equivalent of what, like $4,000 now, right?
Yeah, it was a lot of money. I mean, to get a professional camera back then, you didn't buy very many of them, and they had to be interchangeable lenses, and so I went to this place called Main Camera. I think it was located near Sibley's, with my dad, and then bought the camera there. So
a Nikon?
It was a Nikon. It was a Nikon. I only could afford one lens. I think I had a 50 millimeter lens back then, and I went to RET, and then they had a cage there where you could rent equipment out. So that's how I got more stuff, and slowly started to get more camera equipment there over time.
So when you started taking photographs, what interest you? I mean, the people are more interested in people, or
I love
landscapes,
people.
Or what?
I always loved taking pictures of people. I mean, the photography has always been a tool for me to meet interesting people, to interact with people. That's what the vehicle always been. I'm so interested in other people and how they tick and also how they look, and being able to capture their essence in one picture. Everybody nowadays, they take thousands of pictures every month probably on their cell phones. But back then you really had to really concentrate on taking as few pictures as possible to get that kind of essence of what the person was. So I always loved, photographing people and trying to capture whatever you wanted to, say in that one picture.
Well, that compels a question then. I mean, back then, because you had to have the photograph developed, you didn't know if you took a bad photograph or not until you got it back. And the other thing about that is that there was a certain cost involved to that. I mean, now you can click all you want and there's no cost to that. But the also the thing is that you would take those photographs and you would save them someplace. And now, we have a new grandson. I swear there's going to be a picture of him every day of his life.
Yes, there will be.
And you don't delete these pictures.
No,
they just stay there, but you never look at them unless you put them in a separate album. You gotta take the effort to do that. So the whole idea of digital digital imaging and photography is giving us a whole new set of circumstances we need to deal with, right?
Well, I think if film was invented today, I would say if film was invented in 2024, it would have been a miracle, because you can record on it, you can show it, you can project it, you can store it in this little piece of gelatin, little piece of film. Now I need a computer to see it, a monitor. I need to have hard drives to store them. It's a whole apparatus. I mean, when we went from film to digital, it was a huge deal in the commercial for everybody, but especially in the advertising world and commercial world. It was a huge deal going from film to digital, because it requires so much more stuff that we never had to think about, when we did just film.
Well, we have about a minute and a half before the break, but let's talk about your transition, because you're an ex-corporate guy, right? Just like me.
Well, no, I've always been in photography.
You work for Kodak, right?
Well, no, actually, I did work for Kodak. Yes, I did. But I never a full-time employee, but I worked as a contractor for many, many years, probably 10, 15 years. They had a huge studio with 10 photographers, and I started there as a photo assistant out of college, and then I graduated to be a shooter, but they had more work than I ever could handle. So I would go in there every day, and they'd give me assignments, and I'd worked for Kodak from probably 1986 until 2003 or 4. I did a ton of work for Kodak all the time.
So tell me more about this. I mean, they would have a bullpen of photographers.
Yeah, they actually had a full-time staff of world-renowned photographers, and it was amazing for me to learn as a young assistant. I mean, these guys were world-renowned, not 10 guys that they had full-time jobs that traveled all over the world and worked there for many years. And it was a huge studio on State Street. And I was so fortunate to get in there as a photo assistant. So I worked there for 4 years for those photographers, and I graduated to be one of the shooters. And so then I worked there as a contractor. But like I said, they had so much work and they had faith in me that I was able to do so much work over the years for Kodak. And
that's a great story. Now these world-renowned photographers, I mean, so they had other jobs and
they worked full-time Kodak photographers. Kodak photographers.
And what would you be taking photographs of, and where would they be going? Or the assignment across the world?
All over the world they would shoot, and a lot of corporate stuff and corporate oriented stuff. Like it would do anything from doing still lifes in the studio to traveling. Neil Montana, in particular, he would travel over the world for the Kodorama and Coloramas that was in Grand Central Station. Yeah. He would shoot all those, and a lot of other guys did too. Steve Kelly, Sam Campanero, to name a few of those guys, were really accomplished photographers.
And that the big photograph that was at the Grand Central Station was called the what?
Colorama.
And there's someplace in Rochester you can see that right now, and you're going to find out about that right after this break. This is Dom for my friend Jim Shelley and his Fanatics Pub and Blue Stage in Lyman, New York. Like I say, a short scoot down 390 to exit 10, make a left at the light. A couple miles down the road, there's Fanatics Pub and Blue Stage. You can see their nightly shows by going to fanaticspub.com, but this time of the year, his patio is open for free entertainment 3 to 6 on weekends. Go! It's a great place. This is Dom for my friend John McClurg. John has 2 dealerships, McClurg Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram and McClurg Chevrolet, both in Perry. Hey, you don't buy a car all that often, so when you do, shouldn't you go to a place you can put your trust in? You can depend on McClurg. John's dealerships are family dealerships where people you deal with today are the people you will deal with tomorrow. No nonsense. Go visit them at McClurg-ChryslerDodgeJeep.com or McClurgChevrolet.com. Well, welcome back. We're talking to John Myers, and John has you said it's an advertising company too. I mean, tell me about some of the stuff that you do.
Well, we work for companies and different corporations and to doing videos and still photography to whatever create their needs. So it could be everything from, telling a story on a video to doing still shoots to sell their products.
Well, before the break, I said we were going to tell everybody where this big picture, what was it called again?
It was called the Colorama.
Colorama. And it is... It used to be a car dealer in Rochester. Huge. It is huge, but it is at the Eastman Museum, and you can see it now. It is absolutely enormous, and that used to be an advertising deal when you went to Grand Central Station. There was a big photograph. But you're saying one of the photographers in the group that you work with would take that picture.
Yeah, many of the photographers did those pictures they would take different turns doing different assignments, and it changed every month. So it was a lot of work for them to do those coloramas. And then they did a Codorama in Times Square, and that was there for quite a few years there too on the Marriott Marquis. It was a different format. The Colorama is a really long, narrow picture, so that's why it was so tough to do that in terms of panoramics and things like that. That they would have to figure that out, all different subjects, and there's a whole book on it, and they did it for many, many years.
I think a lot of people don't understand the science that goes into a photograph. It is highly technical these days. You were talking about, and in full disclosure, my daughter was an assistant for you there, intern, I guess it was at one point in time, and she tells me about doing something they call teching, which you didn't do that years ago. You would take a photograph years ago, and you would put it into your solution or whatever, and then you would do whatever to change the look of the photograph then manually, right? It wasn't digital.
Yeah, no, they would do it in the darkroom.
And how did you do that? How did you change like you look at something with Ansel Adams, and it's got different shades than the actual photograph was. How did you do that? I mean,
it's funny because I took photography in college, and we did darkroom work, and we learned those techniques. Yeah. And they would do all things from code lifts and different kinds of exposures and things like that. After college, I never did work in the darkroom again because, we make our money taking pictures, not spending all our time in the darkroom. So we have labs that would process our film and do everything we needed to, prepare it for companies, to use and however they use it. And the printer did a lot of that work too. Back early in the career, the printers would take our transparencies. Uh-huh. We didn't shoot negatives. We shot transparencies, large transparencies, and they would do separations, and then they would do all the things they needed to do for the printed page.
But now there's so much more technical assets. So somebody's taking a photograph, somebody's taking a professional photograph, and then there is an assistant who's on a computer talking to the photographer and telling him how to adjust the exposure,
everything.
And whatever.
Yeah, it's called a DIT. So now we shoot everything right to a computer. How it worked before is we would have Polaroids that fit the back of the cameras, and so we would take Polaroids, and then that Polaroid would be a little tiny picture. And then you'd evaluate the lighting, you'd evaluate everything you needed to evaluate on that Polaroid. And then you'd take that Polaroid back off and you'd put the film back on the camera like a Hasselblad and then you would take your film, 2 or 3 rolls of film, hoping that, getting expressions of taking a person's picture, taking it, and then you'd look at each other and say, yeah, I think we got the shot. And then okay. And then you would take one more roll because you were worried, and then you would send it off to the lab. And that's how it worked. You wouldn't, and then that person would leave. So you had to really know what you were doing. I shot in Europe and all over the world, where sometimes we would shoot in different parts of the world where when we shot film, we would get the film processed in that country because we couldn't leave and fly back to the United States. Number one, because X-ray machines in different countries.
Oh, yeah.
And number two, we wanted to make sure we got the shot. So I remember being in London one time, shooting in London, and they had special motorcycle guys on motorcycles that would pick up your film at your shoot, and they would race it to the lab, and then they would process the film in an hour and a half, and then they would race it back to you on the shoot, and you could look at your film before, make sure you got the shot before you tore everything down or the people went away or whatever it was. That's how it worked in the commercial world. Like in photojournalism, of course, you get what you get. It's like you're waiting for the shot, the moment you're observing the scene and you're getting it. Where our world, we have to get exactly what the client would want. So that's how it works differently.
Well, and that's something my daughter educated me on, is the difference between journalistic photographs and photographs that you're taking for, let's say, advertising or for a client, and that you can't do anything with a photograph you took for a journalistic publication, right?
Exactly. Well, I don't know the exact rules behind that, but journalism is so different because you're observing the situation, and you're not supposed to retouch it. Yeah, of course, not retouch it or change it. It should be the moment that it is. They don't want you to doctor the image. Where with us in advertising, we change everything in post. You would not believe what people have asked us to do in the last 20 years of shooting digital. If you could change it, you could. Listen, I only can make somebody look so young before it's ridiculous. Where people's like, listen, we take one more wrinkle off this guy's face, and it's gonna look like it's not gonna look like him. So
well, anybody who's ever seen a hamburger on TV,
yes.
They don't look like that. I don't care if it's McDonald's or Burger King. It does not look like that. I mean, the mayonnaise is shaving cream or something. It's just horrible. It really is horrible.
They do a lot of retouching, on everything you see to make it look as perfect, as idyllic as possible. So it's got to look appetizing or whatever it might be, a person or a product.
Now, doing this for a living, let's talk about some kind of off the wall questions. Some clients easier to work with than others?
Oh yes.
Look at the expression on your face. Okay, tell me a story.
No, I mean,
come on.
It's just extremely difficult. I mean, when you have so many things, there's so much. You figure, like when you do let's say a TV shoot, and if you're doing a TV commercial, there's a lot of money riding on those commercials, because they might have a media buy for $500,000.
Oh yeah. So
and then and even still shoots, the way still shoots work, the picture is so important. So every aspect of that is scrutinized. Every word they say in a TV spot, how the picture looks is all scrutinized because they have a specific message they want to say. And even to how we set the shoots up, I work with an amazing team of people. Heather's been my producer for 24 years, and she has to get, certain and she'll set up the shoots and in terms of everything from demographic to the clothing they wear to the atmosphere around them, the location we're shooting, and every aspect of that picture or that video is scrutinized to make sure it's it's exactly what they want.
Well, and we're going to get into that right after this news break, but the business has morphed. I mean, not only technically, but in the business that you used to do compared to the business that you are doing now. And one of the things I'm fascinated by is your ability to adapt and change your business over time, because you were saying that family portraits were big back when, but not so much anymore.
Well, I've been in advertising my whole life. And so what happens is, I shot film initially, and I learned that in college, and I learned that beginning of my career. First 15 years we did film. And then in 2000, I had to change to digital, which was a whole nother being. It was a huge deal. I mean, to learn how to work with the computers and things like that, and how to expose and do those things and work with the cameras and all the technology. I never had that in college, all this. And then to go from there now to be a director and do motion, the last 15 years, that's a huge learning curve too, in terms of that.
So we're about ready to head to the news break, but after news break, I want you to tell me a dirty story about somebody. I mean, you had to have come across somebody. And look at you smiling. He knows something. We're going to drag this out of him right after this.
Okay, you got it.
And now we're from Gene Cornish, an inductee in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and famous Rochester guy, about his favorite team.
My favorite team, the Rochester Red Wings, is number 1 in the standing. And the boys will be back this Tuesday, July 23rd to Sunday, July 28th. Get your tickets at redwingbaseball.com. see some great ball.
Well, welcome back. You're listening to the No Nonsense Roundtable. We're here with John Myers, who is a photographer, advertising guy, all-around good guy, entrepreneur, lively, probably about my age, I would think. I don't know. We're
Close.
You're close. How old are you?
I'm 64.
64. Okay. Well, I'm 70. I mean, that's okay. I mean, you look better than I do. You just
I have my hair in my teeth.
Yeah. Well, yeah. You decided to keep your hair, and that makes you look very young. But you're very lively too. You're full of energy, which makes a really great interview. I'm enjoying talking to you. So before the break, I was promising everybody that I would make you tell a naughty. It doesn't have you're too much of a gentleman to tell a naughty story, but tell me a story about something that didn't happen the way you expected it, or something.
You know what? This is a few years ago. I used to do a lot of Hasbro toys, and Hasbro toys had all kinds of products. We'd shoot people on their for the packaging, and I got a call that Peyton Manning had just won the Super Bowl, and so in Indianapolis, and they wanted me to fly to Indianapolis to shoot a picture of Peyton Manning for the package. And his brother was there too. Eli was there, and they were doing a TV shoot in the morning for Nickelodeon. So they said I would have an hour to 2 hours to do this photography.
Wow.
Peyton Manning, which is a huge deal, right? So I got there like at 9 o'clock in the morning with the art director, and he was a huge football fan, big Cincinnati fan. But he was a huge football fan. So we showed up with my assistant, and we spent all this time setting up lights in the background to make a perfect shot of Peyton Manning. And so we're supposed to get them like at 11 o'clock, and they're doing the TV shoot. So 11 o'clock comes, they're still doing the TV shoot. 12 o'clock comes, still doing TV shoot. I'm like, oh my gosh, no. And I heard they had to leave at 2:30. He had to leave at 2:30. So we're waiting, and this is supposed to be our big time. And all of a sudden at 2:15, he walks over to the set, and they made him put on a backward jersey because they don't have any Indianapolis on there for the packaging, and there's like 10 people around him because he just won the Super Bowl, all these handlers and everything. I just wanted to take his picture, and I guess the art director is so funny. He was this guy from Cincinnati. He was so excited. He had to show Peyton how to hold the football, So he was like, now Peyton, you hold the football this way, and he was like, he was on cloud nine. But it was like, I took maybe like 20 pictures of him, and he left. That was it. That was all I had to do. But we had planned this all day long for this huge shoot, and then I had literally 5 minutes on the set, and then that was it. But most of the time they give us more time than that. Whenever TV commercials are involved, they never give the still photographer very much time. They're just the pain in the background.
Well, my daughter tells me, because she's taken some photographs for some famous people, but she was saying, Dad, sometimes they come in and they've been through it so many times, they kind of are programmed to, I want this pose, I want this side of my face, I want
exactly.
Is that it?
So exactly right. I've shot a few famous people in my life, and they a lot of times they have handlers. Sometimes it's funny because some of the nicest people I've ever met, once I get them on set, they're just these famous people. They're amazing, and most times they're like that. But a few times, it's like, I'm trying to describe this. Like, there's some people that think they're important, but they aren't, and they're the hardest ones on the set at all. Be on set at all. In terms of asking for things or being, because I'm there to make them look good. And that's my job. And if they're not going to let me be in charge, and not be in charge so much, but just take control of the situation, and they want to be in control of it, then I can't do my job. I mean, it's best of my ability. But most, like 98% of the time, people are, once again on set, my job is to make them feel relaxed as a photographer, and when I do video, to make them to feel relaxed. So they give you best performance, or they give the best expression. So it feels like an honest, sincere moment. It's not that, everybody knows those people that have those Christmas photo smiles. They look like they're about to break every tooth in their mouth because they smile so hard. That's what a lot of people in their brains, they have this, they smile for pictures and they have this huge smile. It's just so uncomfortable looking. And my job is I want to get a nice, sincere, honest expression out of them. And that's pleasing, depending on whatever I have to do in the assignment.
You just gave me a gift, because now I know where to go with this conversation. You're talking about video. because now you're doing something, or you have a program for video for people who want to, let's say, have a legacy.
Yes. Yeah. So 2 years ago, I read this book called The 5 Secrets You Must Discover Before You Die. It was longer than that. I read the book. And in the back, they interviewed 200 people from the ages of 60 to 100. And they figured out they asked these questions to them, and they figured out what these 5 secrets were. In the back of the book, they had these 14 questions that they'd asked these people. And my dad had been the CEO of a corporation, had a really great career, wonderful man, a long, successful life. So I went over one day and I brought the book and I asked him these 14 questions. I recorded him, and he told me about his life, talked about his challenges. He talked about his all the good things and bad things, mostly good things that happened in his life, his family, and how much he loved his wife and things like that. And then 2 years later, unfortunately, he passed away. And I remembered I had that tape, and I took it and I edited it and gave it to my family for Christmas. Mm-hmm. And it just was so profound how it affected them to see my dad laugh, to hear him talk about his life and how much he loved his family and those other stories that we'd heard so many times. And I got this idea, that was so powerful how it affected them. I said, well, I could do this for other people. So for 2 years, we worked on this idea with Heather and Roman and my son, Dan Myers, who works at the studio, and came by the name of a company called Life Innerviews. So now we just started this company where we interview couples or individuals to tell their life story for their family. So they have all the stories that you heard from your grandmother, your mother, whatever, over and over again and now that's something you can keep forever and watch whenever you want to, because people aren't with you forever. So that's what we wanted to do.
No, it sounds like a fascinating idea, because there's so many. I mean, in particular, I obviously Nita's parents and my parents have passed away, but we were talking about one time her dad was in the war, World War II, and he was in the Navy, and he was a chief petty officer. So he had a lot of responsibility, and he gave us little snippets here or there about what his experience was. But I wish we talked to him longer. I wish we had something where we could hear these experiences. And I think the other thing is that it sounds like what you have is something that you can't do. It's like I say, I don't do my own dentistry. You find somebody who knows what they're doing, and you hand it over. You hand it over to somebody else. It sounds like with the questions and the field that you have for having done this a number of times, that this is a product that would be compelling for a lot of people to have for themselves, or for a family to buy as a gift for their grandparents or parents.
Exactly. I mean, the thing is, we've worked on, I've worked with interviewing people for years and years. And I think the most important thing is that you're able to relax somebody. We go to people's homes. You got to make sure it's a beautiful conversation that you have together. And it happens to be a camera there, but the people get to tell their stories. And, we've tried to make this product in this company where it's a real easy thing for someone to do. Once you get there, we make it so you can, tell your stories. We ask the right questions to be able to get as much, things out of them that they want to share with their families in a comfortable manner.
Yeah, there are a couple of questions that this compels, and after this break, we'll talk about them. But it is an interesting thought. I haven't heard of anybody doing this before.
There are a few people in the country that do this, have done this. We did some research on it, but there's not anybody locally that does this kind of stuff.
Okay, we're going to talk more about this after this. This is Dom from my friends at Jack Greco Furniture. You drive your car, you live with your furniture. That's why Nita and I buy our furniture locally from Jack Greco. Hey, lots of old name furniture manufacturers switch to mass production, producing their furniture who knows where. Why settle for that? Jack has quality pieces made by true craftsmen, and if you need a custom piece, Jack can do that for you too. The season's upon us. Jack has quality outdoor furniture you won't find anywhere else. Go to jackgreco.com. Well, welcome back. We're talking to John Myers, the founder of John Myers ad. What is it? Ad agency?
No,
photography?
The studio is Myers Crave Imaging.
And how'd you come up with the word John Myers?
My parents gave. I'm an identical twin. So
are you?
When my
well, how do I know I'm talking to you?
Well, my brother Mike, he talks a lot for a living too. But when I was born, my mother didn't know she was having twins.
Oh, really?
So when I came, I was number 2. So they were so confused. They named him Michael and me John, and that's how I got John Myers.
Okay. Well, okay. So he's your older brother.
He is 4 minutes older. 4 minutes older.
He probably holds that over your head all the time.
He does all the time. He does all the time. But you know.
So what does he do for a living?
He actually worked as a teacher, sales trainer for many, many years, and now he has a company called Coach Him, and he's out of Boston, Massachusetts.
Okay, let's stop talking about him.
Okay, no more about
because
Mike.
we can sell some stuff for you. know?
That's right.
So as we're talking about this life interviews thing, it's fascinating. So you get mom and dad together and interview them for the family. Now, one of the things that I would ask you probably it's not only that you're taking videos, but if they have other photographs or
exactly right, yeah. So we'll take images. Well, it's nice because we'll do the interview and we'll start from how they. Let's say we do a couple interviews. We also do individual interviews too. So people want to talk about their life too. So we'll take and do the interview. After the interview, whatever they talked about, if they talked about their wedding, when they first met, maybe their first house, their family, all those things. If they have pictures that exist, we'll put that in the video, and also motion. If they have old movies they want to show and put in their little clips. These generally last between 40 minutes and an hour, these life interviews, when they're finished products. So we can add different things in there so they have some sort of so they can see how they look like when they got married and those things like that, and it kind of goes along with the whole video.
Well, they say the best time to have planted a tree is 50 years ago, and the second best time is now. So I'm looking at this like oak trees. I mean, you are creating something that can get passed down from generation to generation to generation. I mean, 100 years from now, you're still going to be able to look at this interview from your great grandparents.
Exactly right. The thing is, number one thing people have told me when I've talked about this new company and about the idea is everyone to a T says, I wish I would have done this with fill in the blank, grandma, grandpa, my parents, my aunt. It's when they're gone, it's too late. So I think that's so important that people think about it and not keep kicking it down, because eventually they won't be able to do it anymore. So that's what makes them so great. I mean, and the things about the videos, when they've showed the video to their family, they've learned things that they didn't even know about their parents. Or their father, mother, whoever's in the interview, and about how they met, and it's really interesting. I think they're so entertaining for me to watch, even though I'm not part of the family. We have to edit these things and they put them together, and I've so enjoyed, talking to them and learning about their lives. They're good and mostly all good, but some of the challenges too they've had.
Well, the thing is, I think human nature is that when you're interviewing somebody, they might be a little different when you're doing it rather than part of the family. I mean, part of the family would be like, Dad, we heard that 12 times before, but if you're interviewing them, you're a professional interviewing them, and you can have a sense of where to go with the conversation. It's like even today, I have no idea where we're going with the conversation, but something compels another question, and having the ability to interview somebody professionally, you're much more professional than I am.
Yeah, I don't think so. You do a pretty good job.
Well, that's very kind of you to say that, but there's got to be a certain advantage to having somebody from the outside doing that, and I think that might be even more comfortable talking to you than just the kids setting up a camera and pointing it in their direction.
No, that is so important, right? And we actually, during the interviews, we usually say, just if not to have other people around, just have because we're shooting in your home,
right? And
it's comfortable. Just have a conversation with me and you. Then these stories are fresh to me,
right?
They're not like you said,
right?
Someone had told us the same story 10 times. They're fresh to me, so they'll tell the story with the enthusiasm and that they would tell the first time to anybody else. So that's what makes it so wonderful, because you do get these stories that they have told their kids 10 times, but it's fresh.
Well, especially veterans. I interviewed Jack Foy, who was in the Battle of the Bulge, and the stories that he told and the things that he said, I mean, it's, I tell you, to have him someplace on an interview, actually you can get this interview on nononsenseroundtable.com. It's outstanding. I mean, it really is to have these things documented for people.
Well, it's funny because to think about how things were 30, 40, 50 years ago, how things have changed, and to have the kids and grandkids see this and what they had to go through and the challenges they had. It's almost like, how when you're a kid, you see your parents a certain way, but then when you get married and have kids,
oh my God, yes,
you see your parents a whole nother way. Once you have your own children, you're like, oh my God, they did this for me. And understand how the struggles and the good times they had when you were a kid.
Yeah. So let's do a little retail here. How do we get a hold of you? Website and phone number? And
Life Interviews. It's it's INNERVIEWS. It's like
Interviews.
Interviews.
Oh, that's very creative. Is it lifeinterviews.com?
.com, exactly right.
Life Interviews. I like that.
Yeah, so we wanted to talk about the inside. So, and the number is 585-325-4547.
And what was that number again?
Again, it's 585-325-4547.
Oh, you have a radio voice. Give that to me. 585. Go ahead.
585-325-4547.
So we only have a couple of minutes left, but are there any more stories you have of any famous people you've taken pictures of?
I think I was, it's funny. I've done things like with like Bill Cosby before, years and years ago.
Bill Cosby, somebody's had trouble in their life when you say Bill Cosby before. I
didn't know. I know nothing. He was
Bill Cosby.
Sorry.
Harvey Weinstein.
No, I didn't know. No.
Harvey Weinstein before. Yes, that's right.
So, he was delightful. He was delightful to me. I mean, he was very, very professional, but delightful. But
I learn something new every day. That's great. Anybody else you can share with me?
Let me think. Things like I remember working with Rudy Giuliani one time, and
before
before too. Before. But he was these guys are so great to work with. Both guys were really great to work with, and they've done it so many times.
Yeah.
It's not like, like you said before, like when you work with a professional who's had someone famous had their picture taken so many times, it is that, they know just exactly what to do. So it is.
Well, you have a compelling personality. I would think make people open up to you. Now, these interviews, do you do the interviews, or you have some of your people do these interviews?
Well, both Heather Roman and Dan Myers, my son, are part of this company. They do. We all three of us share responsibilities in doing the interviews for Life Interviews. So we all kind of work on this together.
Well, I come cheap. I mean, really. I mean, I could do that for you if you like. And,
I would love for you to do them for me too.
Yeah.
That'd be fantastic.
You're too kind. You have one fault, and you're just too kind. But at that, we are at the end of our time, and it's been delightful having you in here. And
thank you very much. I really appreciate it. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, and when I first met you, you said you actually heard me on the radio before, so you're
yes, I'm a fan.
You're one of the people, and I really do appreciate that. So, everybody, next week, same time, same place as the No Nonsense Roundtable.
Thanks for listening. Tune in every Saturday from 10 to 11 on News Radio Wham 1180. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll make more.